right, everybody. Hopefully this is streaming now. Looks like it's going to. And we are live. So hopefully this is going to work. I haven't been on here in ages, so I've been wanting to come back. I have actually purchased a new webcam, and you're seeing me on that right now. It's called a Goosey HD92. I got that off Amazon. It's wider focus, as you can tell, but try not to pay attention to if there's any lag or anything like that, because this is going on a streaming thing and the connection may be bad. So when I actually get this on a video that I sit down and record, the quality will probably be a lot better, and I won't have to settle for 720. Right now it's not taking 1080p very well, although this is a 1080p camera. It swivels, it has awesome picture, but the microphone is terrible. Okay, I'm using my Audio-Technica AT3350, I think is what it's called, ATR 3350. And yeah, the microphone on this thing is awful. So let's go ahead. I'm going to get on the get on the live stream and see if this is doing okay. If there's any lag or anything like that, because actually I've got it set to, the video is set to slower. I don't want that to happen, so let me go fix that real quick. This is going on a streaming thing, and the connection may be bad, so when I actually get this on the video that I sit down and record, not too bad. So you can tell the camera is wide angle, so that's very good. You get to see everything. I don't have to, be all hunkered down in a small space. But let me let you hear the actual camera that's on the device. There's no noise gate or anything. If I'm quiet, the Audio-Technica camera is very, very quiet. Matter of fact, we got it a little bunched up more than it needed to be. But if I'm quiet on the other one, you'll get to see the difference. You'll get to hear the difference here. And if I talk, big difference. This is the camera. This is the microphone that's actually on the camera. So it's a lot worse than the Logitech C9270. I think it's what it used to be that I was using. I've still got it, but I prefer the video of this one a lot better. You see it's got a lot better detail. So I'm going to go ahead and switch back over to the other one, because the microphone, like I said, world of difference here. And we're back. All right, back to the Audio-Technica. So I'm here today to talk about the evolution of tone. More specifically, been tweaking around with my own tone lately. Still don't feel like I've got my own signature tone, but I feel like I'm closer with the gear that I have. And right now I've got a little bit, quite a bit of gear, not an X effects or anything like that, but I do have my Digitech RP355, which I've had for years. Love it. Haven't been using it a whole lot lately because I've just been experimenting with a new software. It's new to me, even though I've had it for a little while, because it came with my Peavey ReValver VIP amp, which is, you can't see right now, it's behind me. You can see portions of it right there. But it came with that, and it's called Peavey ReValver version 4. And that's what I'm going to be using a little bit today. I'm also going to be going over my pedal combination here of the Joyo Ultimate Drive and the Ibanez Tube Screamer. Maybe even throw a wah pedal in there. Just the other day I was messing around, and I decided they've been sitting over in the other video area for a good while, probably a year or more, and I haven't used them. I was like, man, I really want to hear what they sound like again. So I've moved them over, and now they're here under my desk, so I can use them here. Because right now all that set up with recording equipment and stuff like that, and I just haven't moved it. So this is kind of my space for recording for the time being. So just wanted to go over that. Like I said, I'll be using the ReValver 4. I'm going to be using both this guitar and Scorch, is what I've decided to call my Squier Stratocaster Affinity Strat. I'm going to be using different tones for that as well. So let's get started on this. Right now I have my Ibanez RG4EX1. Okay, we got a little delay on it. The sound is coming straight from the amp. I've got it plugged in via USB. I'm going to have to be doing some chord magicianry, wizardry here in a little bit to try to switch everything around so that nothing overlaps. As it turns out, when I try to enable my audio interface as the input for the ReValver 4, it picks up the microphone. So I have like distorted voice sounds now, and I don't want that. So I'm gonna have to do it probably a little bit differently, but that's fine. And also, if I try to do USB as the input, it's still picking up the amp modeling and everything from the Viper VIP1. So I have to basically go direct in. So I'm gonna have to do that here in just a little while. It's got the tones that I need for the most part, distortion and everything, so I don't need my Jorio pedal or my Ibanez tube screamer because it's got, you know, emulators and things like that. Now I will say, if you'll pay attention to the cards that are on this video, I've got it set up so that some of the videos that will show up is a playlist of the gear demo and review playlist that I have, and you can go there to look at see more information about my Jorio pedal and how I use it in combination with a tube screamer. I did a video on that a few years ago, so hopefully you enjoy that and you can learn a bit more about the tones and everything. I think I did an unboxing on it as well, really in-depth reviews and stuff on that. But right now let's talk about tone. Myself, I've really been enjoying playing with my Ibanez again. I've just recently restringed it, and it makes a world of difference. I've been wanting to restring the Strat, but the problem with that is there's a little issue with the, I guess you would call it the second position. I got the fourth position because I start with the first on down to the fifth. A lot of people, I think the standard is that this is the first and that's the fifth position. But I'm going to go down to where these two come together. Now, there's apparently a little bit too much hum there, and I'm wondering if on the Strat, if it's actually got all three of these pickups enabled, which would cancel out the ability to cancel the hum. Because you got 3 pickups, an odd number, versus 2 pickups wound in like parallel, I guess is what it is. I'm not exactly sure how that works, but so I've been kind of avoiding restringing that because I was going to take it to the shop and all that, but I don't know, that may happen later, because if I turn on some distortion here, you still got a little bit of that hum between these 2 pickups here. A lot in the middle, and nothing, no hum on the others. Okay, if I turn on my tube screamer, still there. Now a lot of that too is to do with the wiring in this room or something. I don't know what the deal is, but there's a lot of earth, you know, static electricity or grounding problems or something. I used one of them little plug outlet things to test each plug, and every one lit up the correct circuitry. So I don't know what it is that causes these ground loops. You have that. You have no noise over here. Don't have a clue. It doesn't do that anywhere else in the house that I'm aware of. It doesn't do it in the living room, I know that. But it does it right here in the music room, of course. Okay, so as far as tone, this is the clean channel. I'm going through the clean channel of the Ibanez, or excuse me, the Peavey Viper VIP. Also, you may be hearing, this is coming in through the input is coming in through the VIP, but you're also probably hearing it from the microphone. So let me mute the microphone while I play around a little while, and you can see what's happening. This mic is what I'm talking about, so we can just hear the input. Okay, now I'm going to enable the Jorio Ultimate Drive so that we can, you know, hear the difference in that and what kind of tone that has. Right now I've got the gain all the way up. I've got the tone all the way up. I've got the level at about 9 o'clock. Had to look at the clock to figure out what that was. And I've got the toggle switch all the way to the high because this is a pretty thick pedal, and I don't like it too thick. So I've got the tone cranked up and the toggle switch on high, and you'll still hear that it's got a little bit of thickness to it. Okay, that's with the Joyo pedal enabled. I actually have the Ibanez Tube Screamer enabled as well, but I'm using it as a boost. I found the combination of the Ibanez Tube Screamer, I think it's the TS9, that's one of the original ones, the newer version of the original, the one with 3 knobs. I found that works really well as a overdrive boost to the Joyo Ultimate Drive. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the Joyo Ultimate Drive first, and then I'm going to engage the Tube Screamer. I want you to listen in the difference in sustain. I'm going to hit one note and bend it, see how long it lasts, and then I'll engage the Tube Screamer, and you can definitely hear a little bit more crispness to it. Not Christmas, crispness to it. As far as the Ibanez, I have got the drive set to about 9 o'clock. The tone is at about 2 o'clock, so it's not all the way cranked up to the highs. And the level is at about 11 o'clock, maybe a little bit past that. And you'll get to hear how much sparkle that adds to the tone of the Joyo Ultimate Drive. So let's try that real quick. Okay, so you can really see how that sounds. Now, if I'm quiet again, there's just a little bit of a hiss coming from the Ibanez Tube Screamer because I'm using I think it's called a Godlike power supply. It's not a one spot, but it's basically the off-brand of that. It's got all these different daisy chains and different things like that. And I'm using that to power the Ibanez Tube Screamer. For some reason, it just has this weird whistly sound. If I turn that on again, you'll hear it. Especially with the Joyo pedal. That high-pitched, weird sound. That could probably be mixed out in a frequency, but I don't want to have to try it. So if I was actually recording with that, I would probably use a battery. But for just jamming along like I am now, it doesn't hurt anything to do it like I'm doing it. So let me take a quick second. I want you to notice there that added a little bit more sparkle, a little bit more high end. I had quite a few more harmonics, even though I couldn't really do them like I wanted to. I didn't have the right pickup selected, but here's I'm going to leave the microphone so I can speak in between. Here's the Joyo again by itself. Ibanez Tube Screamer engage. Without. Yeah. Listen to the brightness. It brightens up quite a bit. Here's without. And with. Okay, so, and to basically quit that from happening, that little hum at the end, I can, for one thing, disable the Ibanez Tube Screamer, or disable the joy oil here. The joy oil will probably work better, but if I want to leave it on, you know, I can always turn the volume knob down like Paul Gilbert does. Now, I want to see, it says there's a lot of CPU being used, so I want to see how I'm doing over here on the live stream for a second. I'll go ahead and mute the microphone here so that you won't hear anything of me talking or anything like that. Okay, it doesn't seem as if there's any problems or anything like that. There seems to be a little bit of a lag, but hopefully it'll be all right. If not, then maybe the next time I stream, we can work something out on that. I don't know. Maybe it'll do better streaming from YouTube versus from the open broadcasting software that I'm using. So as far as tone, what I want to talk about and discuss about the evolution of tone is I've been listening to a lot of Paul Gilbert lately, and recently there's a YouTube video of him playing a medley of like all of the songs that he's written since '86, I think he said. And there's like 20 or 30 something songs, and he's playing instrumental versions of them and just riffing like crazy, one right after the other. And it's a good 35-40 minute set. It's really cool. I invite you to take a look at that. I mean, it's amazing the stuff he can play. But throughout the years, if you listen to the actual albums of this stuff, the tone evolves. It's a different tone today, big time, than what it used to be. Back in the Racer X days, it used to be more crisp. It used to be a little bit less what he would call fuzz, which most people would call like overdrive. And it was more distortion oriented. It was more like there's not a lot of delay, there's not a lot of reverb. It was just, and there was some chorus. He would use that a lot, and it would just have a nice tone to it. And by tone, I know you can get tone out of your fingers, the way you play and everything, but I'm talking about actual strict tone coming from the guitar and the effects and the pedals and things like that. Now, today, he does a lot more fuzzy stuff. He does a lot more chunky, rhythmic, playing, mostly in blues style playing, a lot more than he does like the riffing, shredding stuff, which is okay. That's what he wants to do. That's fine. But I prefer, the old tone at least. Even if he plays the new blues stuff, that old tone really was ripping, and it had a lot of sustain, a lot of clarity. That a lot of his tone today just sounds a little bit too muffled because of the extra overdrive that he likes to use. He has like 2 or 3 different fuzz pedals, and but the other thing is his tone has evolved to what he prefers the sound of. And with me as a musician, I'm constantly looking for ways to try to get the sound of other players that I like to hear, other players that really speak to me orally and through ears. So I'm constantly on the look for that. And one thing I really realized was that overdrive. For the longest, I've never really knew what overdrive and distortion, the difference between both of those meant. Distortion basically is distortion. It is a distorting of the tone to where it sounds like that crisp metal sound like you are familiar with. The Joyo Ultimate Drive, it is a overdrive pedal. It's actually supposed to be emulating the I think it's Full Tone is the name of the company. I might be wrong on that, but it's the OCD, Obsessive Compulsive Drive. It's supposed to be emulating that pedal. And so it is a drive pedal, and Paul Gilbert actually used that for years. But to me, it has a more distorted quality. Now, other brands like the MXR Distortion Plus or the Boss DS1 Distortion, which to me sounds a little too, I don't know, it's a little too screechy. I don't know, it's like somebody scratching. It's not a very pleasant tone to me. There's actually a setting on the ReValver 4 that I'll get to here in a little while that kind of, to me, sounds a little bit the same. But those tones, the distortion has that more crisp tone. And an overdrive is basically, if you have a tube amp, it is meant to drive the tubes to where they have more of a saturated sound. And that's what a tube screamer is. It's the classic Stevie Ray Vaughan sound, that classic twangy sound that a lot of people use. I'll just give you a demonstration of that. I'll have to turn the drive up, or the level up a little bit maybe. But here's what it sounds like with the tube screamer on. Okay, it's a little bit of a drive pedal. I'm going to turn that drive up to about 12 o'clock, about 1 o'clock. So now you're not going to hear the twangy sound because this isn't a single coil guitar, but I can put it on like the neck in the middle and you can get a little bit more twangy. Okay, put the drive up a little bit more, and now you can hear that high pitched hiss a little bit coming from the adapter. So typically, if you already had like an amp channel that was a gain, you use a tube screamer to overdrive that saturation of that distortion, and it would just like thicken it up, and it would just mesh together and make this, this huge tone, just a new tone. And if I do this without the tube screamer, here's what it sounds like. With the tube screamer. Okay, so I'm going to back that back off to about 9 o'clock, where it was, so that will act as a boost to my overdrive, the Joyo Ultimate Drive, which to me is more of a distorted sound. Okay, so once again, you have just heard that. Here's what the Joyo sounds by itself. That's a distortion to me. Even though this is an Ultimate Drive, this is a drive pedal, that to me is a distortion. Gain is all the way up. I mean, you can adjust the gain to your liking, but for me, I found it, to me, I like all that gain. Now, Paul Gilbert also, once again, and other artists, they tend not to use a lot of gain, which was weird to me, and that's because they rely on their amp distortion, and that's a totally another topic we're about to talk about. Okay, so this is the Joyo Ultimate Drive. Okay, and here's the tube screamer by itself, a little lower now since I turned it back down. But it has a nice twangy tone to it, and then if you combine them, So once again, I disable those pedals. After I hit it, I can just hit that vacuum switch and it's good to go. Now, talking about amp cabinets and amp models and things like that, that's one thing just recently I have been kind of thinking about, not really researching, but watching other players and watching how they play their solos and everything. A lot of them talk about how they use the distortion on their amps. They don't really come out and say it like that, but you can tell that's what they're talking about. They'll have a distortion enabled and they'll be like, well, I have a little bit of a clean sound already with just a little bit of grit, you know, and then they'll play it. And you're like, okay, where's that grit coming from? It's obviously the amp, because then they engage a distortion pedal and it really pumps up the tone. So for me, a lot of, when you're out there trying to find tones that sound like your favorite players, like Steve Vai, Joe Satriani, Paul Gilbert, Peavey ReValver, you got to realize a lot of that tone comes from the amp, okay? And if you can have an amp modeler, even nowadays you can have an amp profiler, and that will help you achieve that tone a little bit better, okay? If you don't have the amp, if you're using just any old amp, like I'm using the Peavey Viper series, the VIP series, or before that I was using a Crate, a GFX, way back in the day, I'm not going to get the Steve Vai sound like I thought I would, even with a pedal, because there are circuits, there are tubes, and there are other things that make that sound what it is. Now, recently, a few months ago, me and my brother did a video on the Hughes & Kettner Grandmaster Deluxe 40. And I asked him in that video, and that's one of the included videos in the Gear and Review demo playlist I mentioned earlier. I asked him in that video, is that the only sound it has? You know, not that I was disgusted with it, because, you know, it sounded awesome. It had a nice, thick, saturated tone. But he said, yeah, it is what it is. It's its own amp. It's not trying to sound like anybody else. It's not trying to, you know, be like anybody else's amp. This is the signature tone of this amp. And that kind of, a light bulb kind of went off for me then. And, you know, I got to thinking about Marshalls and Legacy amps. Steve Vai uses a Legacy amp, which now you can buy in a $500 pedal that's actually the amp in a pedal. It's pretty cool what they come up with. Hughes & Kettner has their own amp sounds. Marshall has their own amp sounds. Nick Johnston, he uses Mesa Boogies a lot, and John Petrucci uses Mesa Boogies. So you can think about your favorite artists. Yngwie and Joe Satriani use Marshall. Satriani used to use Peavey, but he switched to Marshall. A lot of people are switching to Marshall. And Paul Gilbert actually used to use Laney, which his tone back in the Laney days sounded really good. But if you think about your favorite players, they each have certain amps. A lot of times we look at the guitar, oh, I got to get the guitar, I got to get those pickups, I got to get those pedals. We totally ignore the amps. At least I do. I don't even think about it. But the amp is half of their tone. If you think about it, if you just have an amp and a guitar, that's it. So the amp is where where the tone comes from for the most part, and the pickups just color that tone a little bit because of how they're wired and which particular type of pickups you get. So thinking about that, a lot of your tone that you're going to try to strive for, if you don't have the same amp, or at least a profiling amp, like a Kettner, a Kemper, or a Bias, Axe Effects, I'm not sure if they're a profiler or not, but those are the high dollar amps that you can, you know, basically copy every other amp. If you don't have anything like that, or you don't have the original amp, then you're not going to get a lot of the tone that you're striving for. Just keep that in mind. Don't be disappointed about it. And even amp modeling software like the Digitech RP355, Boss pedal, you know, the GFX or whatever they call them nowadays, and the Zoom pedals, which I've myself have been interested in looking into. There's one particular pedal, I forget what it's called, but it's a multi-effects pedal, and it's just a stomp box, but it has like all these awesome amp cabinets models and amp models and cabinet models and all these things, and has really nice tone. But even those aren't going to come to be 100% like the amps that you're looking to get, and like the tone of your favorite players. So when searching for your own tone, and when you're trying to evolve your own tone, the way you sound, you have to kind of start with, well, for me, it's like, well, it's too bassy. A lot of times, the one thing we do pay attention to on people's amps is, okay, what knobs do they have turned to? What's their bass at? What's their treble at? What's their mids at? That's the main three things we think about. Yes, we can start there, but still, those circuitries and the circuits and everything that puts together that amp is not going to sound the same. Even on my Viper here, it says in the manual somewhere about even if you change to a distorted tone on the same amp, the EQ levels are not going to be exactly the same as that crunch tone between the lead and the crunch. So the EQ is going to be adjusted accordingly. So it's not going to be 100%, just like that. So keep the amps in mind and get either an amp modeling, multi-effects processor that does amp modeling, or go out and find the amp of the person you like or the tone that you like. Don't necessarily try to be Steve Vai, try to be Paul Gilbert. But if that tone keeps calling to you, then yes, by all means, see what you can do to try to make that happen. Now myself, since I picked this Joyo pedal back up, I'm really enjoying it. It has a little bit more of a filtration sound to it. For me, it almost sounds like a wah pedal is stuck maybe somewhere in the middle lows, something like that. If I turn it on again and engage it here, a lot of thickness, and I've got the tone turned all the way up. I've got the toggle switch engaged to all the way up. And I don't know if I said it earlier, but the level is actually pretty low. It's at 9 o'clock as well. It's a low level, and it's got a lot of push to it. I mean, I'm barely even cranking this thing. But it's got that that almost wah sound to it, and that's another reason to use a boost pedal of some kind, because it would help brighten that up a little bit. Okay, so for me, I have to have that to kind of brighten that up a little bit, because they almost made the circuitry too thick. So think about amps. Think about, what does the amps distortion sound like? What does their clean channel sound like? What does their rhythm channel sound like? And the good thing about this is when we go into the ReValver here in just a little bit, we are going to have a lot of fun with the different amp models, because this came from Peavey. Peavey makes these amps, so they're going to know how to model their own amps. All right, so that's one thing to think about as well. A lot of people use different software like Guitar Pro or Guitar Rig, and there's another one I can't think of it. Amplitude's another one, and there's one more. It starts with a T. I can't remember what it's called, but a lot of people use those, and they do have a lot of good tone to them. You basically have, with today's technology, you can get those tones. The problem with getting just a pedal is your amp is half your sound. So you have to think of the amp in the consideration, because that's where a lot of the tone comes from. And if I just get a bunch of Boss pedals and don't have an amp, and I go straight through to the computer without some kind of amp and cabinet, to go with it, then all I'm getting is the tone from the guitar and from the pedals. I'm not getting that amp sound that you're striving to get. So that's why people go out and buy orange amps, or they'll buy angle amps, or all these other amps, Engel amps, I mean. So amps, that's another big thing. All right. So with my tone, I'm enjoying the Joyo pedal, but I am enjoying even more the Peavey ReValver 4. Now before I go to that, let's go switch to my Strat here and see what the difference in tone is, especially since we have single coils. Okay. So let me disable this so we don't get any hum or feedback, and I'll be right back. And we're back. Now let's hear what the Strat sounds like. Much different sound, a lot of spank because of the single coils here. Let's try that with the Joyo pedal. Now we're going to get a totally different sound than what we did earlier. Okay, so I actually have a humbucker here, and if I turn it on, you'll definitely hear where these two are kind of humming now when they shouldn't be, because these should cancel out the hum, just like they should up here in this position. So let me engage the Joyo pedal. I don't understand that. Now I put it in the humbucker position, it goes away. It goes away here. And does not here. So these two cancel each other out because two pickups basically make a humbucking pickup. But if I go to the other position between here, we've got hum, because three pickups, I think, is what's happening. So I need to get that to the shop and taken care of. But I may just wait until later on down the road. But for now, here's what a Joyo pedal sounds like. The ultimate drive. I'm going to turn off the microphone so we don't hear, any kind of delay. Okay, now let's hear that with the Ibanez Tube Screamer engaged. Forgot Keo was in there for a second. Now I will disengage the ultimate drive and go into the Tube Screamer. Okay, so those sound, quite a bit different on a Stratocaster. And even, if I engage the wah pedal over here, and we put on both of these at the same time. Okay, so we can hear what that sounds like. Now, to me, the Joyo sounds better with the Ibanez. Okay, I would have to turn down every time with this particular guitar to get the tone to kind of, you know, get all that squeal and everything out of the way. It's one bad thing about humbucking pickups, but when they're on clean settings, they sound awesome. Okay. Now, real quick, let's go into the Peavey ReValver 4, and what I'm going to have to do is, I think I'm going to have to mute the amp when I'm talking, and maybe even mute my vocals when I'm not talking. I'm not sure, because I'm going to be plugged in directly to the same interface that my microphone's plugged into. So this may get kind of hairy, so just bear with me on that. And I won't need the Joyo pedal and the wah pedal and all this other stuff. So I'm just going to take it right out of the main part of the chain from the wah pedal and go straight in from the guitar to the effects processor there, and we'll see what happens. Okay. Okay, so nothing's coming out because it doesn't have like an amp model or anything like that. So let me go ahead and go to the ReValver here. And what I'm going to do is share my screen so that you can see what's going on here when I go to the ReValver program. All right. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's see how I can do this the best way. Alright, you should be able to see my screen now. And here's the ReValver 4. And I pull that up. And what you're going to see is this is the ReValver 4, and I've got the output. I need to put the output channel on here. And what's going to happen is I've got it muted right now. If I don't mute this, I'm going to turn my guitar down. If I don't mute this, you can hear what my voice sounds like, and it's going to squeal like crazy. So prepare your ears for this. Hello, everybody. Get out of my yard. Just like Paul Gilbert. So I'm going to have to actually probably mute my voice here, go back and forth between turning the microphone off and turning it back on. Hopefully I will not forget to turn it back on, and won't have to worry about that. So I guess that's the only way I can think about doing it. So here we go. Before I do that, I'm just going to show you something real quick. I'm going to set this up to gig mode. That way I can preload all the presets that I've created so far myself. All right, so I'm just going to go down here. And I think this is I want to say it's the producer edition of ReValver that came with the Peavey Viper. A lot of this stuff is demo only though. So there's some things up here that are first impressions, that's free. The free bank is free. The no amp really sounds awesome. There's one called Made of Nylon that sounds amazing. It sounds just like a nylon string guitar. So let me go back to that. I want to make sure that I was actually the voice was still working here. So I'm going to go to this, and I'm going to have to go ahead and mute my voice. What I'm going to do is I'll click the empty spot, load a preset, and then we'll come back and talk about that here in a second. Let's see here. Hopefully this will stay muted, so we won't have to worry about that. So I'm going to go with the first one here. Let's try that again. Okay, let's do all these and get these loaded in here. Then I'll kind of explain a little bit more about this. And I'll go ahead and load a couple more that we can choose from here in just a little bit. Just like that nylon one, sounds amazing. So we'll put that in there as well. And on these presets, I usually name them after what they are. So like one of them was called 3130 Cascades Lead, so I'll put my 3130 Cascades Lead. That way I know which place I got it from. So we'll add that one, and I'll add the nylon one real quick off of the no amp. So there's no amp model or, you know, wizardry happening here. And let's do one more random here. See if there's one. Return to the 80s. There we go. There's one right there we can work on. And then the first impressions is another one. The lead. Okay, I think actually one of these was modeled from the lead. I'm not sure. But there's all these that are, I think, free. So I'm just going to go back to the return to the 80s. Okay, so now all my gig mode spots are here. You can go up here and save the gig and name it, and then you can load it from scratch. And that's probably what I should have done. I can load my gig, which already had 6 amps enabled. This is just some frequency band stuff I'm not very familiar with. But let's go from the first part of these, and we'll see what happens, okay? So let me turn off my vocals, and let's just start jamming here. Actually, let's try to mute it. No, that's the same input, so I'll have to actually mute the mic here. Now, I'll go ahead and tell you right now that this is not going to sound very good on this Strat. So what I'm going to do is go ahead, switch my Strat out real quick with the other guitar, and I will be right back on that. I'll be right back. All right, now back to the Ibanez, and you'll see the difference in the same amp. Oops, sorry about that. Now, this is a 6505 plus amp. There's all the different settings on it and things like that. You have different channel selections. One thing also that it is so important about an amp is the cabinet itself, upon which it's modeled. In this case, we have a 6505 prototype 4x12 cabinet. If I change that to something else, we'd have all these different things that we could use, okay? So there's a bunch of them here that we can use, and we can get all these different sounds. I remember when Digitech first came out with some of their products, and it was the GNX, I think is what it was, the one that allowed you to record and play and all that. The main feature about that is that you could take two amps and hybrid those together and model one big amp out of those two amps. And this is kind of, the cabinet model is kind of like that. You have an amp sound, but the cabinet it comes out of is a totally different thing, okay? So if I have this cabinet, I'm going to do it with I'll do it with this amp, and then we won't have to worry about doing it for the other amp. So we'll listen to what it sounds like, and as I change the cabinets, you can hear what they sound like. Now also, keep in mind, I'll change the microphone that's used, and you can also change where the microphone placement is. That's one great thing about the ReValver here, is that not only can you have a amp modeler, you can have a microphone placement modeler as well. That's a really amazing feature there, and that all has to do with tone as well. So listen as I scroll through all these different settings, and we can see what happens here. Now this is mainly, I think, well, I'm not exactly sure what that does, but it's got its own little deal there. But anyway, I'm going to scroll through some of these, and you can hear what they sound like, okay? So let me go ahead and mute my mic, and we'll do that real quick. Okay, now you might have heard that weird whoop. That means that it's a demo version. See this little D? That's a demo mode. Okay, you're going to hear a little beep, and so that's going to, you won't be able to record with this or anything because you'll have a beep every single time. So some of these have demo cabinets, but you can hear the difference in sound, and that's going to be the same for mics and all this other stuff. So let's continue here. Now if you'll look, this little TL means the mic is at the top left, okay? And there goes that beep. The mic is generally located at the top left, and you can still change all these and get different settings and everything, but that's what the TL means, and there'll be a top right or bottom left, bottom right. But yeah, the tones definitely sound different every time you change it. I'm going for 412s because that's what it was at originally. So I could cycle through some more of these, but let's go back to the one that it was on, which, let's see, I'm just going to click on the actual setting. If I can find it here. That's it. Okay, so now we're back on the prototype, and here's what it originally sounds like. Well, I'll get to that in a minute. Let's do some microphone combinations here. Okay, you've heard different sounds on the mics. The off axis takes it from being directly on to the straight ahead to the speaker cone to being slightly off centered. You're not pointing directly at it, you're more pointing it at an angle. We have a proximity effect where we can lower the proximity where we're closer to the amp, or we can raise the proximity where we're further away from the amp. That's a really cool effect. And we can turn the actual gain on the microphone to see how much of the amp sound it picks up. Now let's try changing the different speaker cone arrangements around. I'm only going to use one mic here for that, all right? And then we'll cycle through some of the other presets and probably call it a wrap after that. Moving these things different places definitely has different tones. And so when you're recording especially, or if you're playing live using an amp, these are some ideas that you can give yourself whenever you are playing live, where to position your microphone when it comes out over the PA system, and what types of mics to use. I noticed some of these mics had low cuts, which is basically like a high-pass filter. It cuts out the lows so that the bass of the bass guitar and the kick drum can really come through. I like that feature. Let's see, there was another one here. It tells you which hertz it cuts out. It goes all the way up to 150 hertz that it cuts. I'm guessing that's what those are for. So there's a lot of different things that you can use here. And just in case you might be wondering, I noticed there's kind of an effects sound here. So let's find out what the effects are. I've got a little green, their version of a tube screamer enabled, a version of a compressor, and something called the Sheriff is on. This is kind of like a blues drive. At the effects rack level, I've got another noise compressor, another noise gate, which is one reason why you're not hearing a lot of noise in between. Now, this has a lot of high gain. If you'll notice, when I was playing in between the songs, you could hear some noise of my fingers on the strings. And I notice a lot of your professional players don't have that. You don't have to worry about them having that kind of issue because they've just got it set up to where, like I said, they don't use a lot of gain. Their pedal takes care of the gain. That way, when they turn the gain off, you still don't hear all that squeaking and squealing and scratching and stuff like that from the hands. So here's an example of what I'm talking about. So I mean, you just don't hear that from professional players, and that's because they don't have a lot of gain. So on their amp, by the way, I have a reverb here, just a default reverb. On their amp, they might have it to where the gain is, let's see here, the gain is turned down, maybe on their amp. Here's the post gain. I'm guessing the channel I'm on is right here, so I'm at 7, and there's still a lot of gain happening there. I can actually make it brighter because this does have a little bit more of a, dark sound to it. Even switching a lot of these, I had the off axis brightened it up quite a bit. And some of these areas around in here brighten it up quite a bit, but maybe I want the bright sound to be left on. That way when I play, it sounds a little bit better. I never did switch my pickup from the neck position, so let's see what it sounds like if I enable some of this bright and crunch here. So we have a little bit of a clean, a crunch channel here. We can turn the gain down. I've got it down to 2, and it was still shining through a bit on the post gain. So all these different things affect your tone. When we're talking about the evolution of tone, we're talking about how do you find the tones that some of your favorite players use. Not only that, how do you create your own tones? Well, with this, the wonderful thing about this software is the ReValver 4, I can actually use it when I'm recording through my traction waveform interface. I can use that as a plug-in, and I don't even have to be plugged into an amp. I can record straight through it and apply these effects later. I can even, if I don't want an amp at all, I can remove all the amp effects, and I could just go up here and delete this module, and then everything else, I can, let's say I don't like the reverb that Traction comes with, or I can't find a decent plug-in, I can use just the reverb from Peavey ReValver here, and it would work just fine. So that's amazing. I can I can use the noise gate if I want to. All these different things. Now I've got another amp effect here. There's another amp, a B. Okay, so let's see what this one sounds like. And let's see, the effects I've got on there is a chorus and the noise gain once again. Okay, so I'm going to go back here and we're going to cycle through these. Right now we have a Valve King Super Lead, so let's see what that sounds like. Okay, this is right now my favorite tone of all so far. I love this XXX lead tone. This is where Joe Satriani got his JSX model from. If I'm not mistaken, it originated from the XXX tone. We've got the gain set up here in this one area. We've got lead, rhythm, and crunch, and this, lead, rhythm, and clean. And this is one of the better clean sounding amps. For it to be this supercharged with tube sound and tube saturation, this is one of the better sounding amps for clean. So let's switch between the different levels here. This is the lead channel because you can see it's red. We've got a different channel here that I think is going to be orange when it's enabled, and then the clean should be over here. The gain on the rhythm I turned down a little bit, so that would definitely have a little bit of boost whenever I turn on the lead. You've got a presence knob for extra, high end, and a resonance knob for that extra low end, that little thump. All right, so let's experiment with a little bit of that, and you can definitely hear. And it has its own built-in noise gate. Love the fact that it has its own noise gate, and I don't have to add one on the end. Now this is a chorus, or kind of a delay. It's a delay, and it has ambience for room ambience. It also has a little bit of modulation, so it's a modulation delay. Really nice sound to it. I really like it. And then this is just a flanger that happens to be on very, very low rate, very low depth, a stereo field, low feedback, and medium wetness there. And so if you're hearing a little bit of an effect, that's probably the flanger happening there with the delay kicked in. So let's experiment with this a little bit. So you can hear all these different sounds. I love the sound of this tone. It's kind of a mix between Satriani and the old 80s, Paul Gilbert sound, and has really good tones to it. Once again, all this I've been experimenting with, and it's amazing the quality. I mean, this sounds just like a tube amp. That's why I like Peavey's Viper series, because their tube amps sound amazing. It sounds just like they've got tubes in them. I do find that the XXX amp for the Peavey Viper doesn't sound as well as this. It doesn't, maybe because it doesn't have as many controls or something, but I don't know, it just has a better sound on this ReValver than the amp itself. So let's hurry up and cycle through this. The video now is already going over about an hour and a half, and let's go ahead and not hold you too much longer. We'll just cycle through these real quick, kind of glance over what the settings are. You can notice the mic placement and the cabinets and the microphones for yourself. I notice this one does have a bit of room ambience, I think, on. So I'm going to cycle through these, and then we'll call it quits for now. Before I do that, though, this is the amp that I was referring to that sounds like a Boss DS1 sizzle. That's the word I was trying to find. I couldn't find it a while ago. It's the sizzle. It's a little bit. It's not a a clean saturated tone. It's a sizzle just on top of, that sits just on top of the distorted sound, and you'll probably hear what I'm talking about here in just a second. See what I'm talking about? It's got that zzz, a little bit of an electricity shock sounding. It's a sizzle on top of it. The Boss DS1 is, to me, sounds a little bit too much of that. Now this is a pretty good balance. It's not too bad. It's the 3130 amp, and I really enjoy the sound of it. That's why I saved it as a preset. So let's tweak some of the knobs and move on. Alright, the last two we're going to look at is the return to the 80s, and then I'll show you a little nylon sound. Sounds amazing. Let's go to the 80s here, and then the nylon. That one especially on the low end sounds a little rumbly. It almost, the low cuts out. So I'm not really a fan of this one. I think, let's see, this says it's a Valve King 100. Listen once again when I play on the low notes, it kind of disappears. Some of that presence disappears on those low notes there. So you can hear how almost it has that effect to where the speaker is buzzing a little bit when you do that. Now to fix that, you could put this like off axis. It's already on off axis, so that won't help. I might be able to find a different cone position, maybe even tweak the cabinets a little bit. But yeah, so I'm still not exactly sure what the RIR2 is. Let's see if we can hunt for that real quick. There's all these different amps you can use. A lot of them are in demo mode. See, the D is demo mode, so I've got Flat Hill Dual I can use, Sensation I can use, 3130, 20 or whatever. The ones with the D are demo, so they're going to have that little beep next to them. But there's a lot of these that I can, use with no problem. And I said Angle a while ago instead of Angle because that's what it's called here, Angel. Let's see, I'm not exactly sure. Okay, RIR2 cabinet modeler. Let's see, specify geared to play speaker and cabinet impulse response files. So basically this is the cabinet and speaker modeler that we see here with all this whole thing is one section. Notice how it's combined in one little, space here, rack or whatever. So that's the cabinet model there. This is a different version. It's a light version of the one that we had before. So let's go to the nylon string and then we'll wrap things up for today. You're going to be surprised at how this sounds. I totally was. So it has a little bit of a hiss there. There's some digital clipping happening somewhere. Not exactly sure where, but that's an amazing tone, that nylon string sound. So I hope you've enjoyed what I've been talking about here, that being the evolution of tone, and mainly having to deal with tweaking tones and what to look for when trying to find your own tone, voice. Sometimes it's pedals, sometimes it's amps. My personal favorite right now is that XXX Peavey amp model that we looked at. And I'm also digging the Joyo pedal again. I haven't used it in a while. So, but I just wanted to do a video. Been a long time since I've done one. And still a lot of things going on. I've finished Smart Vocus Book 2. I've got Book 1 and 2 out now on Amazon. I've been working on that a lot. I'm also now finally starting to work on my album a little bit more. I'm hopefully going to get the first single done. Been mixing a lot of stuff and learning a lot of stuff in Traction, and so each one after that shouldn't take that long as much as this first one has, because number one, I'm a perfectionist, and number two, it just is a big learning curve for me anyway, since I'm new to the whole mixing scene, not just learning the software, but the whole mixing scene. And I definitely, if you're looking for home recording resources, this is a real good one. Home Recording for Dummies. For Musicians for Dummies, that's a good resource. Graham Cochran over at recordingrevolution.com is another good resource. I've learned a lot from him. So if you're looking to make your own album and things like that, check him out. This is going to be an all gospel bluegrassy type, album of songs that I've written, and that I'm really proud to finally be able to be releasing some of these. So it will be all acoustic. There'll be no electric instruments in there. It's all acoustic, and then hopefully one of these days I can sit down and record some electric stuff. And myself, I need to practice more, because really all I can think to do is the same old stuff, as you probably got bored with after a while. But I need to get myself under a practice regimen now that school is starting back up and I'm starting private lessons back up again. Hopefully I'll be able to sit down in between those breaks between students and start working on my own chops, and then get better at that myself. So thank you guys so much for watching. This is all I have left for today, and I hope this inspires you to go out and learn more about your own tones. Sit in a guitar store somewhere, tweak the amps, mess with them, go to a Guitar Center or someplace that has a lot of selections. Find that tone you're looking for, and try out some of the pedals and things like that. The point is, you don't have to spend a lot of money on a lot of gear, but you got to realize where a lot of your sounds come from. And it was a big light bulb to me when I realized that the amp has a lot to do with your sound, and the pedals and everything else just color that sound a little bit, and so do the pickups and the guitars and things like that. So thanks so much for watching. I hope you really enjoyed this video. I'll get off here so you can get back to your day, and please, if you like it, give it a thumbs up, and please subscribe if you're not a subscriber. Even though I don't come out with videos as much as I want to lately, I finally hit the past 700 video mark. A lot of these are in my newsletter archive from Texas Blues Guitar. I had a newsletter archive, and let me look that up real quick so I can give you a link to that, because you may want to check that out. If you'll go to, let's see here, let me find it. I don't think, actually, yes, I think that's what I'm looking for. Make sure this pulls up correctly. Go to secretsoftexasbluesguitar.com/newsletter, and you'll be able to get your free samples of the videos. And once you get that, it will take you, it's like a 5-part video series based on my Texas Blues guitar course. And once those come to you, you'll be able to scroll down and see a link to the new video newsletter archive. So it's amazing that I've finally been able to get all that together so that people can watch it. But it's now on its own page, and it looks amazing, and I think you're going to enjoy the experience of that. And so definitely check that out, Secrets of Texas Blues Guitar /newsletter. And probably going to update that page. I don't think I've updated it to show that it does include a link to that archive page. But thanks so much, guys, for watching. I know I say that a lot, but I truly mean it. I'm up to past 11,000 subscribers, and I know it's kind of creeping slowly because I don't put out a whole lot of new content, but I'm just trying to put out content in other areas like books and albums and different things like that. So I appreciate your subscribing, I appreciate your thumbs up, and I appreciate you sharing this with as many people as you can on Facebook and all these other videos that I have on YouTube. Like I said, I've got over 700, some of which is on that newsletter archive. But I've got over 700 videos for you to watch of different, gear reviews and intermediate guitar, advanced guitar, electric guitar, acoustic guitar, all these different things that you have access to. So don't be, worried that I haven't come out with another video in a while. Take advantage of all the content that I do have. All right. So this is me signing off. Time to go get some dinner because I'm hungry and I had much to eat today. But I really want to get this out here. I've been putting it off and putting it off, because sometimes I don't feel like I have a lot to say. But I had a lot to say today. So enjoy this video. Rewatch it over again several times and see if you like it and get some more ideas for your content. All right. And I'll see you guys later. Keep playing, and God bless.